中美贸易战的第一批受害者。
The US-China trade war has already claimed its first victims, luxury goods manufacturers like us. American brands now offer only two options: pay a penalty up front and handle the rest ourselves, or keep exporting at prices slashed by 70%. A 70% cut means we can't cover costs, let alone pay wages.
This business owner went on to promote his products via livestream, hoping to sell goods in China's severely declining consumer market.
这边随便一件衣服能卖到100块钱。
Clothing here once sold for 100 yuan per piece, but now it's sold by the ton, with each item worth just a few cents, and still no buyers. This 20,000 square meter warehouse in Jiaxing holds export goods turned into surplus due to tariffs. Zhang Xiaoquan scissors, once valuable, now sells for cents in piles. Crocs, socks, blankets, and pajamas sit unsorted, unwanted. Toys that fetch dozens of dollars in the US are now mere cents. Shifting these exports to domestic sales is incredibly difficult.
The tariff war has had serious effects across China, but the Chinese Communist Party is still determined to hold firm. Some analysts believe the CCP will inevitably lose this trade war, especially since Trump's strongest measures haven't even been fully implemented yet. Political scientist Ming recently shared on FTV News that Trump's aggressive tariff strategy against China demonstrates his team's assessment of the CCP's threat, which surpasses general expectations. He suggested that Taiwan should pay close attention to this development. Ming stated that the current situation is merely the opening act, and the real blow from the US might come within the next 90 days. The US could encourage other countries to impose tariffs on China by offering reciprocal tax cuts. Once many countries unite against China, it would severely harm China's export market. Ming predicts China's private businesses could lose confidence, banking troubles will surface, and social instability will rise. Eventually, political conflict will erupt within China, with someone inevitably challenging Xi Jinping's leadership, either from within the government or from society itself. On April 12th, President Trump temporarily exempted some electronic products from global reciprocal tariffs. The CCP immediately celebrated online, claiming Trump had finally surrendered, suggesting the US had shot itself in the foot. High-ranking CCP officials mistakenly took this as a sign of Trump's weakness, describing it as a small step towards correcting the US's wrong approach. However, just hours later, the CCP's optimism was shattered. President Trump made a strong statement on Truth Social on Sunday, denying that iPhones or other Chinese-made electronics had received tariff exemptions. This clarified any speculation of policy relaxation. Trump explained that his April 11th announcement didn't remove tariffs. Instead, these products were shifted from the 125% reciprocal tariff category to a different tariff bucket. They still face a 20% tariff related to China's fentanyl issues. Following Trump's latest announcement, pro-CCP commentators online expressed frustration, saying plans can't keep up with sudden changes, and joking that only the Trump of the next moment can defeat Trump now. Another user humorously remarked, "If something I said yesterday was wrong, please take it up with yesterday's me, not today's me, because today's me wasn't there yesterday." U.S.-China affairs expert Lan Shu explained Trump's tariff adjustments as relating to national security concerns. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick explained this issue. Products like chips, computers, and other high-tech items are critical for national security. In the long term, their supply chains need to return to the U.S. This is similar to steel and aluminum, which are also crucial for national security. So a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum applies no matter where they come from. The same goes for chips and computer-related products. In the future, there will be special tariffs just for them. Having just declared a U.S. surrender, the CCP quickly felt betrayed and vowed to fight to the end. Reuters cited 4 sources who said Beijing ordered officials into a wartime posture. Foreign Ministry and Commerce Ministry officials were told to cancel vacations and keep their phones on at all times. Observers suggest China may retaliate by halting exports of critical minerals like rare earths and possibly stop buying U.S. soybeans. Senior political and economic commentator Wu Jialong noted, if China stops importing soybeans from the U.S. and turns to Brazil instead, once Brazil's supply is taken by China, Brazil will have to buy from the U.S. to restock. So in the end, U.S. soybeans will still make their way to China, just through Brazil. China will essentially pay a Brazil middleman fee, which actually raises costs. So the impact on U.S. soybean sales isn't that big. Regarding rare earth minerals, Wu added, China once halted rare earth exports to Japan, leading Japan to innovate and reduce dependency by developing new technologies and alternative sources. The US is already working with an Australian company to mine rare earth minerals domestically, though transitioning will take some time. A widely circulated video on social media featured a blogger pointing out that many Chinese online commenters encourage confrontation with the US without understanding the consequences. If China loses U.S. orders, Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and Cambodia will eagerly step in. Cambodia, in particular, has long had a vision for taking over China's export business. Since Europe's purchasing power isn't even half of America's, it's unclear where else China could sell its products. On Chinese social media, a trending topic about how to eat tree bark has appeared. Users shared detailed steps like drying, grounding into powder, sifting, and steaming it to sarcastically highlight their economic difficulties. On April 11th, Mr. Qian, an exporter, noted that the ports in Yantai and Shanghai and Guangdong were stacked with containers. Very few container ships were leaving for overseas destinations. On the very day the CCP showcased its determination by imposing retaliatory tariffs of 125% on American products, it quietly made another move. China's Semiconductor Industry Association issued an urgent notice, and the General Administration of Customs simultaneously modified regulations regarding semiconductor products, drawing considerable attention. The notice stated the rules for determining the origin of semiconductors have changed, recognizing the location where wafers are manufactured as their official country of origin. The notice recommended that integrated circuits, packaged or unpackaged, must declare the wafer fabrications plant's location as the origin when imported. In semiconductor manufacturing, tape-out refers to the actual fabrication process when designed circuits are sent to a wafer factory. Thus, the origin of integrated circuits will now be determined by where wafer production occurs, rather than the traditional locations for design or packaging. This new rule means that chips not made in the US can avoid high tariffs when entering China. This change has sparked discussion online. Some commenters said the China Semiconductor Association's clever move quietly changed the wafer location to the tape-out location, giving US wafer suppliers a backdoor to avoid tariffs. Since many American IC design companies use Taiwan's TSMC for manufacturing, some believe this move is intended to bypass the 125% US tariff, turning US goods into Taiwanese goods. One online commenter said, now Apple's A-series, Qualcomm's Snapdragon series, and chips from NVIDIA and AMD likely won't face tariffs in China, because these chips are made at TSMC in Taiwan, and the customs declaration will list the tape-out location, which keeps the tariff rate unchanged. Other commenters mocked, is the CCP acknowledging Taiwan's independence now? All high-end electronics are now made in Taiwan. They talk tough against the US, but secretly offer benefits to US companies. Expert and senior engineer Yuan Bo stated that the tariff war will significantly increase the cost of semiconductor products in the short term. If tariffs are imposed on semiconductor raw materials and finished chips without any related exemption mechanisms, the cost of imports will rise sharply. Currently, most Chinese tech companies have not established comprehensive supply chain sustainability plans and lack mature alternatives in the short term, making it difficult to avoid the impact of tariffs. The CCP appears to lack the ability to effectively resist the U.S. in key industries such as technology, resorting to indirect measures to navigate the impact of tariffs. Meanwhile, the U.S. continues to make moves. On April 14th, the U.S. Department of Commerce published 2 notices in the Federal Register, announcing an investigation into the impact on U.S. national security of imported semiconductors and semiconductor manufacturing equipment, as well as drugs and pharmaceutical ingredients, including finished products. Some online analysts suggest this is a sign that the U.S. may soon impose tariffs on semiconductors and drugs, expanding the trade war initiated by Trump. For years, Trump has emphasized that foreign-produced drugs and semiconductors pose a national security threat. He views bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S. and revitalizing American industrial capacity as key to the nation's security. Trump has repeatedly said tariffs will be levied on these imports to boost domestic production and secure global leadership in artificial intelligence. On April 13th, Trump wrote on Truth Social that the U.S. would conduct a national security tariff investigation into semiconductors and the entire electronic supply chain. He said, "We're taking a look at semiconductors and the whole electronic supply chain in the upcoming national security tariff investigations. What has been exposed is that we need to make products in the United States and that we will not be held hostage by other countries, especially hostile trading nations like China." On the same day, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick stated in an interview that Trump would impose special focus tariffs on smartphones, computers, and other electronics within 1 to 2 months, while also applying industry tariffs to semiconductors and drugs. Experts suggest that Trump's real Trump card has not yet been played, and that Xi Jinping's problems are far more complicated than just tariffs and the economy. The South Korean newspaper Chosun Ilbo analyzed in a recent column that tariffs are not only targeting Southeast Asian countries involved in watching the origin of products, but also smaller nations actively participating in the Belt and Road Initiative, such as Madagascar and Lesotho. Chosun Ilbo stated that every action Trump takes is preparing for a confrontation with Communist China. After taking office, he immediately pressured the Panama government, publicly announced U.S. plans to occupy Gaza, and demanded a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, gearing up to focus all efforts to countering the CCP. Finally, he launched the trade war with tariffs, officially declaring war on the CCP. Fudan University international relations scholar Zhao Minghao said, "For Xi Jinping, the real battlefield is at home, not in bilateral negotiations." British psychic Craig Hamilton Parker, who accurately predicted Trump's election and the Brexit, forecasted at the end of last year that China's economy would be severely impacted by 2025, leading to major social unrest, possibly even a civil war or a coup. Parker said that when Trump returns to the White House, U.S. trade sanctions on China will intensify. Tariff barriers and export restrictions will severely damage China's manufacturing industry. Factories will cut production or shut down, and many people will struggle to meet basic living needs. Economic pressure will ignite social dissatisfaction. Parker also mentioned that protests in Hong Kong will resurface, more intense than ever before, and uprisings will emerge in mainland China, though he doesn't expect them to be as bloody and violent as during the Cultural Revolution. Instead, he senses that for some unclear reason, this revolution will unfold in a uniquely Chinese way, with a shift in mindset among Chinese people, leading them to reject cooperation with evil.
美国一而再、再而三对香港进行遏制打压。
The U.S. has repeatedly suppressed Hong Kong, and what they'll get is the accelerated demise of their agents there. In the end, it will backfire on them. Let the country bumpkins in the U.S. cry out before the 5,000-year-old civilization of the Chinese nation.
These crude remarks from the CCP's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Director Xiao Baolong went viral online in mainland China. Fueled by pro-CCP online commentators, prison inmates, and other coordinated groups, the comment section was filled with excited, over-the-top reactions. However, overseas Chinese commenters pointed out that the CCP didn't send the notorious Foreign Ministry spokesperson to make bold comments. Instead, they let the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Director, a more marginal figure, step in, which suggests there's more to this move. The CCP has highlighted this crude statement by Xiao Baolong, but deliberately omitted the most important part of his speech at the start. He, the U.S., is not after our taxes, but our lives. This part does not appear on Chinese websites. Xiao also claimed the U.S. cannot stand Hong Kong's success, and external forces are trying to bring Hong Kong back to the instability of the past, attempting to block our path to a better life. This is nothing but wishful thinking. Commenters said distorted remarks were not only eye-catching, but they also revealed key information. Xiao may already sense that President Trump's war is not just about trade, but that Hong Kong could very well become the next flashpoint. Some analysts believe Xiao's comments reflect the CCP's true feelings, showing deep anxiety. His speech also indicates that Hong Kong is at a very sensitive moment. As the front line of the U.S.-China tariff war, Hong Kong may soon see large-scale protests and even direct challenges to the CCP's rule. The CCP has already strongly suppressed Hong Kong's protests, but Hong Kongers, having grown up in a free and democratic world, have not yet been fully subdued. It will eliminate Hong Kong's status as a re-export trade hub. Hong Kong's foreign trade reserves face the risk of being entirely seized by the CCP. Hong Kong residents fear that they will be fully assimilated into China's second-tier cities, which threatens their very survival. Many assets of the CCP's elite class, the princelings, and anti-Xi factions are in Hong Kong. Hong Kong also serves as the key window for money laundering and asset transfers. If Hong Kong is destroyed, these elites will lose their fundamental interests, and they will use their long-established influence in Hong Kong to launch a counterattack, trying to create chaos and seize Xi Jinping's power. Against this backdrop, Xiao Baolong, director of the CCP's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, made a strange statement that clearly shows he understands the critical situation in Hong Kong. On the surface, he was complaining about the US, but in reality, he was signaling to Xi Jinping, aware that Xi's inner circle is filled with false information and analyses. Many hope Xi Jinping will fail, and Xiao doesn't want to be a scapegoat for another outbreak of protests in Hong Kong. He is clearly feeling the pressure. The US-China tariff war has also had a major impact on China's education sector. Some Chinese commenters have pointed out that the trade war is shaking up the Chinese education system, particularly affecting high school and college entrance exams, with many parents still unaware of the changes. A customs officer named Liu, who works at a foreign trade company in Industrial Park, found that her company's orders to the US had dropped 70% within 6 months. Meanwhile, her son's high school suddenly removed the elective course International Trade Practices and replaced it with basic new energy materials. At a key high school in Guangdong, a list of high-risk majors has been circulating widely among parents' WeChat groups. The list includes international trade, international finance, and mechanical automation. These majors correspond to industries with an average layoff rate of 43% last year. Beijing suddenly announced the cancellation of history, chemistry, and other minor subjects from the high school entrance exams. In Haidian Huangzhuang, an expensive new chip physics masterclass was launched at 88,000 yuan per semester. A parent had to cancel his daughter's study trip to the UK, as the new curriculum introduced a basic semiconductor knowledge module, forcing him to convert his garage into a lab. At a vocational school in Changzhou, 40% of the smart equipment class students were forced to switch majors after their training base was moved to Mexico last month. In Shanghai, a parent's bill went viral. The 1.5 million yuan education fund they set aside for their child had shrunk to 1 million yuan due to the exchange rate dropping below 7.4. They switched to the domestic Strong Foundation program, only to find that Tsinghua University had reduced its recruitment by 55%. The quantum computing youth class that they hoped to rely on saw tuition rise from 20,000 to 120,000 yuan in just 6 months. In an even more ironic story, Ms. Li from Zhengzhou spent 40,000 yuan on an electric vehicle study camp and realized that the driver picking her up was an engineer recently laid off from Yutong Bus, a company specializing in manufacturing electric buses. Parker's latest prediction is that Xi Jinping will step down by 2025, and a new leader will replace him, marking a significant turning point for the CCP. Parker had predicted months in advance that Trump's first strike against the CCP would be tariffs and export restrictions. His recent prediction about Hong Kong may help explain the sudden and wild remarks by the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Director Xiao Baolong. Some commentators said that in recent years, Xi Jinping has made 2 major achievements: 1, making Hong Kong disappear, and 2, turning Taiwan into a real country. Whether Parker's predictions about Hong Kong comes true remains to be seen, but it's a topic worth following.